Welcome to the CMO Spotlight, and I'm here with Julie Bowerman, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of the Kellogg Company. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks, Joe.
So I'm really excited to talk to you, Julie.
I'm excited to talk to you too.
It's good. We've known each other a long, long time. So
we are old friends for sure.
It's a rare treat. Often we do these conversations with folks that we don't really have a relationship with yet. So I'm really excited to be able to interview you. So I wondered if you could start by just telling us a little bit about the Kellogg Company. Then I'm going to ask you more about your role as Chief Marketing Officer, and then we'll talk about the journey to get there and your career path to get there. So maybe just start with a little bit more about, a lot of people call it Kellogg's, but the Kellogg Company.
Yeah, so the Kellogg Company is probably not what I think everybody instinctively thinks of Kellogg as a cereal company, and they know our wonderful cereal brands, but the largest portion of our business now is actually in snacking. And so brands like Cheez-Its and Pringles and Rice Krispie Treats and Pop-Tarts and Townhouse Crackers are, kind of all part, RX Bar, they're all part of that portfolio. And they make up the largest portion of our business now, believe it or not. Cereal is still incredibly important and a growing part of our business, but our company is a snacking business as well. So it's really transformed the portfolio over the last few years.
And it's a global business,
yeah.
Right? I mean, they're obviously here in the United States, they're iconic brands that you mentioned, but it's actually a quite global business, right?
Yeah, it is. As a matter of fact, our global business, I'm going to try to remember, let me think about the numbers. It's probably about, it's not 50-50, but it's probably 1/3, 2/3, kind of, 2/3 US, the rest outside. But what's interesting about our international business is massive growth there in terms of kind of the emerging and developing markets. And so lots of opportunity for our business outside the US as well.
Cool. So I know you made the transition to Chief Marketing Officer about 9 months or so ago. So tell us a little bit about what your role is as Chief Marketing Officer.
Yeah. So I'm the CMO for our US-based business. That's about a $7-8 billion business. Oh. My team is comprised of a lot of different functional parts of marketing. So media, content, data, technology, commerce, multicultural marketing, ESG, consumer affairs is actually under my team as well. So we play almost a little bit like an internal full service agency to our brands. And we work very closely kind of as functional experts in those marketing disciplines with our brand teams. Building out kind of the brand strategies, identifying kind of where their consumer objectives are, and then building the activation plans and the measurement plans around those programs, initiatives, et cetera.
Wow. So I know you have a pretty big team that you manage. And we always talk about how early in our careers, we're usually a specialist in something. And then as we grow in our careers, it's more about managing the team and less about being a specialist in any one given area. So would you say at this point in your career, most of your time is about managing the people, or is it still, are you still a specialist in something?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, my job, and I think most leaders' jobs are, really to say, not only kind of, I think first and foremost, it's setting a vision. So that's kind of one big important part. Then I think two, it's then identifying what are the priorities that we need to deliver, priorities against that vision. And then it's the leadership of the people to do that, and empowering them to do it, setting clear goals for them, helping them remove the barriers to accomplish those goals, being clear with them on those priorities and kind of removing the distractions, the things that can easily get in the way of focusing on the priorities. And then certainly the development, the personal development, the career development of each individual person. And so that is really what my job is, majority of the time.
I love that. And I think you had a really successful career even to this point. I know you spent, I think it was 23 years at Coca-Cola, and then maybe a year and a half, a little more at Hain Celestial, which also had a snacking business, organic foods and teas and snacks. So I wonder if you could just tell briefly a little bit about your career path. What did you do when you started at Coca-Cola, and what were you doing at the end there?
Yeah. So my 23 years at Coke, I'd say, are kind of broken up into, I kind of define them as two halves of my career. The first half was a lot of different functional roles, a lot in marketing, but I, had a stint in sales. I had a stint in our commercial strategy, but a lot of the different functional marketing, roles, brand, promotions, media, digital. And so I spent that first half, I think, getting just such a great foundation of, kind of our end-to-end business at Coke. And then I pivoted, not purposely, by happenstance, actually, but it kind of took my career in a different direction. I pivoted towards digital and went much more deep into digital. Started off by running my Coke Rewards and building the loyalty platform there, leading into running digital marketing, leading into standing up our US e-commerce business, then leading into building that e-commerce business globally for the company, and working internationally all over the world for Coke. And, I think what has kind of opened doors for me since then is that duality of my career at Coke. It was kind of this, the kind of the 101 of marketing and commercial execution and how to talk to a retail customer. And then it was this functional depth in digital and e-commerce at a time that was kind of massively growing, and there was massive need for people that had those skills. And I had kind of that unique skill set and that experience of both. And so I've always approached, I think, because of that, I being a functional expert, I still am able to apply kind of a general management mindset to it and say, how is this going to make money for the company? How are we going to talk to Walmart and convince them that we put our brands on the shelves? How are we going to, make sure our supply chain team, understands the importance of this? And, we're thinking about kind of the internal execution and manufacturing as well. And so that's, I think, been, that's, kind of been a defining part of my career. I left Coke after 23 years by my own decision. Largely because I wanted to convince myself I could have a career outside of Coke.
Right.
And, Coke was the most wonderful place to work. I had a great career there. I loved it, but I felt a little confined or defined that Coke was telling me what I could and couldn't accomplish. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to see if I could do it. And so I left to go work at Hain Celestial, a smaller company, still sizable, but in the organic and natural category, some great brands, very different company, a lot of turmoil actually happening at the company at the time I joined it. And it was just an amazing leadership opportunity for me because I had to kind of have a lot of confidence and a lot of courage. And I joined the company at a time that it was struggling a lot. I thought I was actually joining the company as it was getting ready to kind of take a turn for the better. And it was actually taking a turn for the worse. Right. So I was in a company with, a lot of fire drills and a lot of like turmoil and, major things on a day-to-day basis. And it taught me that, I had a lot of skills, and I was now in charge of my career. And so it was well, a little bit stressful at the time, thinking I left my nice cushy job at Coke to go to a company that I, didn't know kind of the next day if our doors were going to still be open. It was a great experience.
That's well, and so you sort of alluded to your career path and the decision to leave the comfortable nest of Coca-Cola for you after 23 years. I'm wondering if there was a piece of advice that you wished you'd gotten early in your career, or if there was a piece of advice that you would give to somebody that's just starting out in their career.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I think for me, I've always been pretty achievement oriented, and had a heightened focus on career growth. And I think at times I let that override good career decisions. And I think I was chasing a little bit the title, salary. And I think there were probably points in my career where I could have done some really kind of interesting things that would have been not only just good for my resume, but amazing experiences, personal experiences. The one that comes to mind for me, that I often kind of lament that I didn't do this, was an international assignment. And moving internationally, and I had that opportunity, and it was going to be in most cases lateral. It wasn't going to be kind of a financial windfall by any means, and it was going to disrupt my family's life, but it would have been such a great personal growth opportunity for me and my family, after the fact. So I think that's kind of the younger self. I should have known that a little bit, is to take a little more risk, know that your career is long, and that you have an opportunity to be a little more courageous, and again, roll some dice and do some things that might seem more where your interests lie, or to get a great experience. And there's still plenty of time ahead to kind of climb the ladder, but I was I think more focused on getting up the ladder quickly.
Well, the next gig for Julie Bowerman might be CMO of Kellogg Europe, or world or global Kellogg, so that you get a chance to live abroad or try something.
Absolutely. I think that's the other part, is like, just be open. One of the things I hate in when people ask me, and I don't do this with my team, is like, what do you want to be in 5 years? What job do you want in 10 years?
Right.
I don't know, I mean, who really knows? I mean, I can kind of paint a picture, but I think most people don't know that precisely. And so I think the concept of like, just being open to, a lot of different opportunities, is a good one.
So I have my own opinions about what I think you're really amazing at, but I believe everybody has a superpower. And I'm curious what you think your superpower is.
Yeah. I think I have two superpowers. I think one is I connect with people really well. I think I have a kind of a style that allows me to connect with a lot of people and feel approachable by other people and build good relationships as a result of it. I think my other superpower is, because I get asked a lot about this from women, is I don't want to use these words, having it all, but I get asked a lot of like, how kind of do you do it? You have this great career. I've got board work. I play tennis. I have my daughter who, I've been very involved in her life. I'm married 22 years. And I feel like I have done a great job at kind of living out all of the things I love to do, and making sure my life was kind of always was full of, a balance of those things. And at times balance tipped a little bit more, but I feel like I do a really good job of kind of managing all of that at one time, and being a great mom, and being a great professional, and, being pretty good at tennis, and
and a great friend too. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
So
I love that. Okay, well, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, but it's related. Are there certain values that you want to demonstrate to your team, or are there certain values that you demand in somebody in the team that would be, you potentially would hire for your team?
Yeah. So for me, I think from a value standpoint, I don't have a big ego, even though I have a sense of achievement. I don't have a big ego in terms of, feeling like I have to be the one that gets the credit for things. And so I really, really value that in people that I work with. that they're really focused on just doing great work, accountable to their job, accountable to, ambitious. The other thing that I value is this concept, and you've probably heard me say this, Joe, is this concept of kind of scrappiness.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like you're a problem solver. You figure things out, and problems don't stop you. You figure out how to work through them. And so that concept of kind of scrappiness, I think, is really important to me. And then, the other thing that I think defines my leadership from a value standpoint is transparency. I can be pretty direct in communication at times, so I don't have problem with conflict. But I think it's really important, even and there's conversations I have many times with people I work with or work for me. They're hard conversations to tell people, you're not performing, or here's a development area. But I think that, as a leader, that is what I am accountable to do, both for them individually and kind of why the company is paying me to get the performance, out of the people, our workforce. And so, for me, like, I really kind of value I think those types of skills. And I hope that I bring very empathetic too. I mean, one of the things I've taught, I was just talking about this on an internal women's leadership group recently. I remember, like, maybe 5 years ago, I went through this personality assessment, and like my empathy score was really low, almost embarrassingly low.
Huh.
And I was surprised at that. And so I have really, really worked hard at empathy as well. And particularly, I think in the last 3 years where, we've had, so much focus around, equity and inclusion and diversity, I've had to really, really practice those empathetic skills to try and understand others' points of views in a way that might not be my point of view, or might be surprising to me that would be their point of view. And so that, I think that's a leadership value that I've developed. It's not kind of innate in me and natural, but I've built it over time. And I think that's also really important.
Well, and that developing that skill, I think, has served you well, just from a marketing standpoint. As a marketer, having empathy to number one, know that you're not always the target customer, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not the customer, and to put yourself in the shoes of the target, customer, and then that scrappiness, or even, curiosity and scrappiness, to me, are some really important skills for a marketer, to be able to put yourself in the consumer's shoes, and then do what it takes to get things right for them.
Yeah.
And anyway, I think that you even though the test told you your empathy score wasn't as high back then, I think you've always probably been able to put yourself in the people's shoes on your team, and put yourself in the people's shoes who you're serving from a marketing standpoint. So
thank you. Thank you. My husband might see the low empathy score every once in a while.
I'm in the same boat, because I think I'm much more empathetic professionally than I am always empathetic from a personal standpoint. I think I actually scored fairly well in one of those tests for empathy, and it shocked my wife. So, so I want to shift gears a little bit, because, as you know, we're marketing matchmakers, and that often means we connect brands and agencies together. So we're not an agency. We're not on the client side, although we work really closely with clients. I'm curious, you don't have to be specific about agencies or anything, but generally, how do you work with agencies, or how have you worked with agencies throughout your career?
Yeah, this is what I thought about when you knew you were going to ask me that. I think this is one of those areas where it continues to evolve. We're frankly doing some work on it right now, just to say, what's the right model, and what do you in-house and what do you outsource? And we've tried a lot of things. For example, like, we brought social in-house 2 years ago, And frankly, it's not working well. And now we're looking at kind of going back, outsourcing it. And so I think that's part of kind of just the mentality you need to have in marketing now, right? Like insourcing versus outsourcing. I think one of the things that's becoming kind of increasingly important for us in terms of insourcing is around data. And really having a data capability in-house. Now, that doesn't mean you don't partner with data sources or, agencies that have great data outside, but kind of having that kind of internal model about data, I think is really important. I think content, I think that we largely outsource that. And so for me, I think we're constantly kind of shaping that, and, balancing like big holding company retainer kind of structure with kind of, bolt-on boutique or specialist kind of agencies. One of the things that happens internally, and this is actually happening in the kind of e-commerce, omni-commerce space, is that business has grown so much for brands, and it's created this proliferation of agencies and vendors with data, digital shelf capabilities, content, search, right? Like there's just a proliferation of that. And so, but there's, not quite the holding company model there as kind of old school marketers would be familiar. And so that's one we struggle with a lot. It's like, okay, how do we piecemeal this is high growth and we need some of these capabilities, but our current agencies don't have it as well as some of these more emerging vendors and agencies. And kind of how do we bring them in and bolt them on to the model without creating too much complexity?
Yeah.
And that's so hard to figure out and to manage, because we spend a lot of our time just coordinating across what we call our IAT, which is our agency, our collective agency team. And so it's like we need the right capabilities, but when you get too complex with too many agencies, then it becomes too hard to manage. So.
We've been working a lot with clients more recently to help them think through what that perfect ecosystem should be for them, because the reality is, and this kind of leads me to another question, which is, are there certain disciplines that you do feel you really should keep in-house most of the time? And then are there certain disciplines where you really value external perspective from agencies or partners? Because one of the things we've been doing is, like I said, helping clients think through what the right mix is, because I don't think that there's a perfect mix. Every mix is different for every company,
Sure.
And so I'm curious what you think the right mix is in your experience.
I think it's more a function of how big your team is, how big your business is, honestly, Joe, it's hard for me to say what the perfect mix is. I mean, like we have a holding company model, and the holding company model, the holding company that we have has a lot of agencies within their network that have a lot of these capability areas. And we hold them accountable to integrate that, right? Like, I don't need to work with their 5 different agencies. I want to work with one team that you do all the hand holding and, kind of coordination internally, and you bring us one plan. And we'll give you the brief that tells you what components of that we're looking for, what different, kind of agency capabilities you tap into. And so I think agencies that can do that are going to be really, really key. And then, like I said, there's just some really key specialist areas that big agencies don't have. And it is more in the commerce space right now. A little bit in social, like the kind of the cultural relevance, kind of agile social space, a little bit, too. I think there's some really kind of fun and interesting agencies. But for me, like probably these specialists in kind of commerce is right now is where, we're kind of pulling outside of our holding company model to look at. But that's honestly the best, that's the best guidance I have.
Yeah. So I have 2 more marketing related questions, and then we'll do some questions just for fun, just to wrap things up. So the first question is, as a marketer, we often are working with other disciplines that are not marketing, that don't necessarily always understand the value of marketing. So how do you demonstrate the value of marketing to those non-marketing functions that we all have to work with?
Yeah, so I think it's like, so we do MMM, and we look at ROI on our investments. That's kind of a standard part of our marketing investment decisioning and stewardship and measurement. And so for sure that. But I often want to go back to kind of what those of us who've gone to marketing, school know is the jobs to be done of the brand, and really asking the question of kind of like, okay, brand X, like what is your most important job? Is it recruitment? Is it retention? Is it relapse users? We kind of have this 3R model that we take with the brands, and really kind of define like, what's the biggest opportunity you have? And then let's measure that piece of it. And so I've shifted a lot of our dialogue about our measurement is more in kind of like, okay, what's recruitment look like? How many new users have you brought into your brand? And that's a very different metric than ROI is on a media investment. And so it's kind of triggering, I think, a lot better dialogue. And it's taking a little bit of the handcuffs off of ROI. ROI is important, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of changing how we think about kind of some of the capabilities and programs. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, 100%. So my last kind of marketing related question is, I think we've all had either programs or campaigns or things like that that have taught us something, either because they've been a miserable failure and we learned something valuable we need to learn, or because they were a huge success. We want to figure out how to maybe emulate that in the future. So I'm curious if there was a campaign or program that sticks out in your mind that just taught you something really valuable that you needed to learn.
Yeah.
And it can either be at the Kellogg Company or Hain Celestial or Coca-Cola. I mean, anything in your history.
Yeah. I'd say probably for me was one of the things was I took an e-commerce job, the first e-commerce job at Coke, where I had to build the business. E-commerce wasn't a thing. Amazon was knocking on our door and saying, hey, we're getting ready to do grocery. Would you, put your brands online or on our platform? And so the company decided, okay, well, we need a leader around it and a small team and have them figure it out. And I think one of the things that I learned in that job, and I was coming in as a marketer, most of my experience been in marketing, but I had to work really hard. I had to build like the financial model, the supply chain capabilities. I had to like work with our bottlers on our distribution agreements. And it just was like eye-opening for me. And I kind of said this earlier on like how important those things are to actually getting things done. And as a marketer, you can sometimes live in your kind of creative space and great ideas and ideas that are kind of catchy. But if you're not thinking through kind of that full implementation, then it kind of won't happen the way that you envision it.
Yeah.
And so like understanding all of those pieces and parts of, that are not necessarily part of kind of the marketing wheel, but kind of that become really important in kind of, in driving in performance of what you're trying to do from a marketing standpoint were critical. And so, I learned that more and ended up spending a lot of time in that part of standing up the business just because it became so, so important.
Oh, that's great. All right, so a couple of questions just for fun to kind of wrap things up. The first is there a band or a book or a quote or a movie or a sports team or a fictional realm that inspires you? And if so, what is it and why?
Okay, so I was excited about this question because one of my dear friends, I'm gonna give, wherever I'm going with this probably, one of my dear friends, Joanne, just wrote a book and released her book, Living on a Smile. I actually wrote the foreword in the book. And so I got to read it probably 6 months ago, and it's so Joanne and so inspiring, and just so many great quotes and lessons in that book. And so I got to give props to my bestie Joanne. For everybody who watches this, to go buy her book. It's on Amazon. Living on a
Joanne
Smile.
Herold, Living on a Smile is the book, and it's on Amazon and all other booksellers. So go check it out. I also have read it. It's fantastic. I wrote a review on Amazon that just got published on Amazon, and anyway, that's a great choice.
Yeah. And I don't say that just because she's my friend. I do genuinely. I read the book, and I didn't know what to expect when I read the book, because she didn't tell me even she was writing a book, to be honest. And I read it and I was like, wow, it's just so many great, just like easy lessons, and a lot of things that I've kind of taken away from that. And I see her all the time. So there was a lot I learned in there. So
I think in my Amazon review, I wrote something like it's like a very good tactical guide
definitely
to living a good life, but also being a good marketer, but also living a good life.
Yeah. And keeping a great network. I mean, Joanne does that better than anyone. So
100%. So I think the last question I'll ask you is there what inspires you or your team outside of your family and outside of tennis? I'm going to take that away too. What is it?
You know me so well.
I know. Is there something that inspires you outside of those couple of things, your family or tennis? Yeah.
For me, like, I am really inspired by people that are, so I do some volunteering with, in 2 places, with an organization that helps women who have, been brought up, who have been through sex trafficking, for example, and a really, significant hardships in life. And this program is really around kind of, rejuvenating them and building career skills, and preparing them for going out and kind of living, kind of in a professional world. And so I mentor a woman there. And then I also mentor at Cristo Rey, which is a high school in town for kids, for underprivileged kids who go to this amazing high school experience, but they're, very underprivileged, and have been given an opportunity because they want to go to this school. And in both cases, to see people who persevere, have ambition, and I play this tiny role in helping them succeed. It might be helping them write a resume, or helping them build interview skills, or figure out what to wear, to an interview, or kind of working through kind of just the challenges of, commuting. Some of these kids at Cristo Rey commute an hour into school every day, and then they work after school and they commute home, and then they're up until 2 working, and they have to get back up, or just like, to me, that is so inspiring. I to see that and to be a part of that and know that I make this tiny impact on people's lives that way. So I try and kind of keep that as part of my mix of the things that, that I do and spend my time at.
I love that. Well, I really appreciate this time. Julie Bowerman is the Chief Marketing Officer of the Kellogg Company and a good friend. So thank you so much for the time, Julie. It's been a great.
Oh, my pleasure, Joe. I adore you. And so I appreciate you asking me to come on. This was a lot of fun.